Hey creatives, welcome back to the channel. I'm Jeff and today we're going to be making some patchwork pants from your old sweatpants. Let's go. So there are 3 stages of this process which I've coined the long part, the hard part, and the fun part. Here are the materials you'll be needing. 2 pairs of cut up sweatpants, preferably different colored fabrics, other fabric scraps from previous projects, a large sheet of paper to make a pattern, scissors, a seam ripper or thread cutter, and some skill with the sewing machine. Take apart your pants with a seam ripper and scissors. Cut off the waistband with an inch of fabric below, as we'll be using this for later. Use the seam ripper if you want to save fabric, but keep in mind it's much faster using scissors to cut the shape out. Cut the pants along the edges of the seam. Save one front and one back piece for drafting the pattern. And cut out the rest into smaller shapes. Rectangles are the easiest shapes to work with, but if you want a challenge, you could cut small irregular shapes. Trim the seam allowance overlap, which is about a half an inch, and we can save these ropey guys for a future project. Next, trace the front and back pieces onto your drafting paper. Make sure to lay the fabric flat and take your time with this because you want to be as accurate as possible for this step. Add a half an inch seam allowance all the way around the pattern with a 1 inch added seam allowance for the hem. Next, you'll want to be marking your pattern sheets so you know what you're doing for each piece. So you could pretty much copy my labels here. I've got everything out for you, and mark a grain line. Cut the paper and make the pocket facing and the pocket bag to match the front side. I made my pockets extremely large because I like that functionality and the space that comes with it, but you could make your pockets however you want. Once you cut everything out, you should have these pieces. This is probably the hardest part of the project, but patchwork is the essence of these pants. So, design your pants before placing the fabrics on top of the pattern in the organization you've planned beforehand. Be mindful of your design as you don't want to bombard the crotch area with heavy fabrics or it'll be sweaty, which is not pleasant. Here are some tips to make your life easier. Start placing the largest patches first, usually the rectangles. Fold the fabrics right sides together, stitch and overlock so that all edges open to the wrong side. Then figure out ways of attaching the smaller pieces to the body. You see in this shot, I've pinned the patches so that the edges aren't exposed on the outside. I will then sew across the easiest seams and make my way towards the most difficult areas. There's no scientific method to explain each scenario, so you'll have to be creative with the fabric manipulation. My advice is to start with the largest pieces and then attach the smallest pieces, which are the hardest. Be prepared to sew curves and use hand stitches for a personal touch. Remember to flip the pattern after each side so you create a left and right side per leg. That's 4 pieces. You'll be making 4 pieces ranging from 2 to 4 hours each. Once you've made the patchwork fabrics, press the seams flat, put the pattern sheets on top, add weights to hold them down, and cut or pretty much trim the excess fabric away from the patterns. Bonus step for you for those who want to make it even more unique. You can either hand embroider or use a machine to embroider some designs onto your fabric. I bought this embroidery presser foot from Amazon for $6 to make my sewing machine able to embroider as well. And I'll be making this little tag with my initials to add that professional touch for the waistband. But you could pretty much add anything onto your legs. Just be mindful of the placement and be yourself. After this, it's essentially just the meat and potatoes in sewing pants, which is the best part. So we'll start with connecting the front and back leg inseams, left and right legs, serge. You should be able to do that. Next, stitch the pocket facing to the front, right sides facing, flip, and add a top stitch on the inside next to the seam. Then lay the pocket bag over the pocket facing, right sides together, and stitch around the edges, leaving around a half an inch to serge.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing session, this is your captain speaking. Let's take a moment to appreciate these fine stitches. That's quality right there. Yep, we'll just be collecting those likes now. If you can find them at the bottom right corner of your screen, please feel free to hit that subscribe button as well for extra precautions. We hope you enjoy your time with Properly Fashioned Airlines.
Next, you'll want to be stitching together the crotch depth or the center of your pants together. Start by pinning the center and then pin the outsides and make your way to the insides. Double stitch for security and serge. Stitch the outseams together to finish the legs. Now we could attach the top of the waistband with the rest of the pants. So what you'll want to do is put everything right sides together like so and start pinning along the 1-inch seam allowance that we gave ourselves earlier. Then you bring it over to the machine and you start sewing along that pin. Do a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Make sure that you're stretching your pant with the waistband because there is an elastic in there, and if you don't do that, your pants will start to scrunch up. Once you do that, flip everything sew and stitched into the ditch, which essentially is a top stitch inside that part that you just sewed. Finally, you'll blind hem the hems around your legs 1 inch above the fold. Do 2 lines of stitches and you are done. Good job, you've made a handsome pair of pants. That's all for today. I'm Jeff. Have a good one. Cheers.